All right, guys, welcome to Webinar Wednesday. This is Manish Vijay from PM Pulse, and we are bringing to you another Webinar Wednesday. This is the third one in the series. Well, in this particular webinar, we are going to discuss about some of the important notes for PMP exams. Are we going to cover all the notes? Of course not. That'll take a good amount of time. But what I want to show you that how notes need to be prepared by you, or what kind of notes that you should focus on. And I also would like to tell you that some of the amazing misconceptions, a lot of misunderstandings that happen, which I see in all the PMP groups that I go to, the kind of questions that are being asked, the kind of confusions people have. Well, I just thought, for a change, let me just share some interesting, amazing notes that you can use for the PMP exams, right? So I hope you have your notepads ready. All right, guys, this is April 29th, third series, Webinar Wednesday, and some important notes for PMP exams. We get started. Just a quick note about myself. That's just my ego self. All right, I'm a slightly old person. I've got 27 years of experience in strategy, program, project management, delivery head, AVP, in all different kinds of domain. I've been lucky. I've been able to work in all the major domains, which actually helps in my consulting, and that makes a very big difference. I've been running a registered education provider. When I say registered education provider, well, that's the certification that you get from PMI to represent them and actually run education on their behalf. I'm one of them since 2007. And I've consulted in 16 countries across 3 continents, authored 3 books on PMP. They are currently available on Amazon. In fact, all sites of Amazon, they are available. And founder of the very first audio platform dedicated to project management. I just thought I had to do something different, something very unique, and this came into effect. And fortunately, it's been doing well. Certified over 20,000 professionals personally. I mean, my organization has over 65 or 66,000 certified professionals, but since I'm the one who's doing the webinar right here, I can only talk about myself, and my personal credit has been 20,000 professionals in different parts of the world. Nature photography is my passion. I am also called Beer Baba because I drink a lot of beer. Well, not because I drink, is because I actually do a lot of reviews on beer and people take advice from me. And I travel. I travel like crazy. I've been to 72 countries around the planet, and I'm still one short of how many my father has been to. And I do a lot of wood carving, and now I'm also an author. All right, having gotten rid of who I am, let's talk about this webinar. Why are we having this webinar? The purpose of this webinar is that there are a lot of trainings available, right? I see they're on Udemy. There's so many cheap trainings. There are so many recorded videos. I was surprised to see that there are some even so-called, I will only say that in quotes, so-called free trainings as well, right? There's nothing known as a free lunch, but yeah, well, that's what people claim. And most of them, I'm sorry, I hate to sound pompous, but most of them really do not give any value. Right? They're just there. Most of them just play on the psychology of price. People think that PMP preparation is just another, what you call, a product, right? And the basic assumption is that all trainings, all books are exactly the same. So let's go for one which is the cheapest. And I have seen horror stories happening there. I know price is a very important parameter that happens that, well, unfortunately, not the best parameter when it comes to education. But let's continue. Candidates are scouting the internet. I have seen people posting such deplorable stuff that it's absolutely mind-boggling. And people search for internet all over, all over the place. And it's pretty horrible, actually, the stuff. So people do get confused, right? Now, some of you may have raised hand, you may have questions, but here's the thing. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go through this entire webinar in one shot, and then there is a place which is called Q&A, question and answer, and at the end we will actually have a question and answer. I'm going to be around as long as you have questions. I'm good at that, and I will solve all your questions. But just as a webinar grows, this is not exactly a meeting, it's a webinar, and basic tenets of a webinar is that I finish it and then I pick up the questions, right? So thanks, and please stick around and go through this webinar. You will actually carry a lot of value with you. And then there's a lot of unnecessary and incorrect practice questions, like questions from third edition, questions from fourth edition of PMBOK are showing up. And that's in some of those free versions that people are, just saying, right? And it's pretty bad. People are thoroughly confused. And there are questions about quantitative questions which will never ever show up in the exams. People are asking about the formula of PV, NPV, IRR. They don't show up in the exams at all. PMP does not want you guys to be financial analysts. Get that, right? They just want you to be good at project management. So let's just concentrate on that. So I see a lot of issues, a lot of misinformation being floated around. With so much of incorrect information, I thought, I would just come forward, talk about things a bit freely, without, mincing words, right? I'm a bit of a direct person, but then, well, nobody's perfect. Wanted to remove a few misconceptions about PMP exams. And well, at the end of the session and the end of this webinar, there is a gift waiting for all of you, right? So it's a very valuable gift. You will actually use it a lot. I can tell you in advance, right? So now the scope of this webinar, well, we are not talking about, which are the good training institutes or something, nothing of that kind. We are not talking about how to take the PMP exams. We are only talking about one small portion of PMP journey. And I'm going to share with you some important notes for acing PMP exams. Are they all the notes? Of course not, but they are whatever that I have time for. Use them. And of course, I'll be sharing more notes as we do other webinar series, right? All of them very well thought out, very pertinent for your PMP journey. Of course, this does not include any of the 35 contact hours applying for the PMP exams. Of course, those would be separate webinars, but not here, right? All right, let's get started. Let's have a quick poll. I'm going to start a poll for all of you. So for that, I will actually kind of switch on something. You will get a question and please try to answer it as soon as you can, because it's not at all difficult, right? It's just something about you. So I've launched the poll for you. Please go ahead and answer it as soon as you can. All right, so I'm getting the answers right. Pretty good. Oh, wow. You guys are clicking fast. That's cool. That's really cool. Go ahead. Yeah, I've still got a few more people to go. Not bad, not bad. I can see exactly where the leaning is. Very nice. A few more to go and I should be okay. All right, so we are kind of stable here, but I think there were a couple of more people left to actually answer this. I'm just going to give them a couple of seconds more and I hope people just kind of answer it, and we are ending the poll. All right, so I have the polls with me, and thank you very much for sharing. All right, let's get rid of the poll and get back to what we were here for, and let's talk about PMP and the kind of questions. Now, this is very important because I've seen horrible kind of questions being floated around. People have even taken screenshots of something called, I don't know, I don't even remember the name, some PMP simulator, and they posted there. And when I look at those questions, I facepalm myself as to the kind of questions people are floating around. So guys, let me tell you something about the questions, right? Most of the questions in the exams are scenario based. They're simply going to ask you that such a situation happened in the project that you're working in, and so thing happened, and what should be your, what will be the best course of action? What should you do next? Those kind of things. Now, they will not tell you that this question is from a specific knowledge area or a specific, process flow. You have to kind of figure it out yourself, right? And for that, you need to be excellent at ETOs. When I say ETOs, it means input, output, tools, and techniques, right? And you just do not have to mug all of them. Absolutely not. Anybody who tells you that you have, all kinds of some kind of process chart they have, that they are even giving it to you for free, please stay away from it. It's absolutely useless. You don't have to do it. It's just too much stress. Don't do that. All right. So scenario-based questions, all right, they are the most. My favorite are the wordy questions. Now, there are questions, you will come across certain questions which would have as many as 2 to 3 paragraphs, but there are not too many of them. But you will find them. Now, these wordy questions are actually the easiest. So whenever you actually see a wordy question, here's my suggestion, brilliant suggestion, right? Just read the options first, and then, I mean, when I say options, every question has 4 options. Only one of them is the correct answer. So read the options first and then go to the question body and start reading it. And when you do that, you will find one go and you will get it right. So that's the trick. Now, when I say that's a good trick, well, it's coming from a person who got 97% in PMP exams at a particular point of time. I was the highest in my country. Then one of my own students beat me. So, well, it's a good and a bad thing. But then after that, they stopped publishing percentages and they moved into more, how do I say, a feeble way of, telling people how much they've scored. I mean, they don't even tell you how much they've scored. They just tell you, are you proficient or not? So, well, wordy questions are my favorite because they're the easiest to answer. Don't let that worry you at all, right? Then there are some tricky questions. Like when you read a question, be very careful, be very mindful. You read the last sentence, you read everything, because a lot of questions would end with except. Like they give you a scenario, and this is a situation where people are shouting, your meeting is not going on well, and those kind of things. They tell you everything, and then suddenly tell you, which of the actions would you do except? That means the wrong answer is the right answer. And that's where people make maximum mistakes. So be careful. There are a lot of except or not kind of questions, right? So be careful of them. You'll get at least 10 to 15 of these except questions in the actual exam. So they're not few. I mean, they're quite a few, right? So you need to get them right, read the whole thing, right? So you get except questions. You get a lot of quantitative questions, right? Now, there are many versions of PMP exams, right? So if somebody's trying to tell you that we have PMP dumps, they can give it to you. Sorry, there's nothing known as PMP dumps. Don't fall for that trick, right? They are horrible. They just pick up questions from some place and they're like kind of moonshining it to you. Don't do that. Quantitative questions are actually quite easy because quantitative questions is basically mathematics, and mathematics has always been easy, right? So that's where you are 100% sure you're going to get it. But please don't concentrate on mugging up formulas, because that's where you will go wrong. Understand them, right? But you get quantitative questions. You get some of these versions of PMP exam will have 5 questions. Some of them will have as many as 15 to 20 questions. So it's your choice. But let me share something very interesting about quantitative questions. 1 or 2 of the questions will definitely be on creating a network diagram. You would have to create it on a rough piece of paper. And I know because you attended, most of you have attended the 35 contact hours training, so you know what I'm talking about. But when you make the network diagram based on one question in the exams, keep that network diagram with you. Don't kind of crumple it out aside, because you will find more questions on the same network diagram. And that's going to save a lot of time. Remember, whenever there's a question on network diagrams, there'll be more than one question in the entire exams on the same network diagram. So that actually saves a lot of this thing. Another thing that you can do is the moment you enter the examination hall, or when you sit for your exams from your own home, because the home version is hitting very soon. They're just working on the final modalities. Beta testing is already going on in US. They've done very well. So they're just looking at the security aspect, and it will start very soon, right? So you would have that option. And when you have that option, make sure that right in front of them, don't carry a piece of paper with material written on it. You will be disqualified. So right in front of them, you have a piece of paper, show it to them. Yeah, this is clean white sheet, and start writing some of the formulas which you feel that you have trouble remembering. So do that before the exam starts, right? And there is a pause in between exams these days. So you'll get a 10-minute pause also, which is kind of cool for you, right? So that's some of the information I thought I'll give it to you. And there will hardly be any direct definition question. What is the definition of a project? Or what is the input of this? Or what is the tool and technique of that these kind of questions don't show up in the exams, right? I wish they did. It would make very easy, but those are for the lower version called CAPM, but not for PMP. PMPO is mostly scenario-based, all right? Okay. As I said, most of the questions are scenario-based, right? You should know ETOs, but from patterns, you do not have to remember each and every ETO. And please, please, please don't use any of the process charts given to you by anybody, even your best friends. Just stay away from it. There are very few agile questions, maybe 4 or 5. So don't get scared. Yeah, there'll be a lot of agile questions after December. When we move into 2021, that's when you'll have 50% of all the questions from agile. Yeah, but right now, not more than 4 or 5, and very basic questions. If you know the definitions, you are done. So don't get scared about agile at all, right? So now on to some important notes, right? They're not many, but believe me, you're going to appreciate them. You'll be surprised that how many PMP trained, people who have trained for PMP 35 contact hours, when I simply ask them, hey, what do you mean by a project? They find it very difficult. They know this definition, which is right here, but it's very difficult for them to actually understand. When I give them a scenario, they're not able to understand, right? So let me give you a fantastic trick about projects. Point number 1, and I hope you have the notepads. Point number 1, the most important point. In this entire planet, on this entire earth, there are only 2 kinds of work. If you have work, it can be either a project or it can be operations, right? A project or operations, no matter what it is, whether it's your personal life, professional life, it doesn't matter, right? Even the rules of the universe, it doesn't matter. You have only 2 kinds of work. One is project, one is operations. Once you get that concept right, you need to understand that if you understand projects very well, then anything which is not a project becomes operations. And anything which is not an operation becomes project, because there's no third category. Get that point absolutely clear. Once you understand that, you really begin to understand what a project is. A project has 3 important features. One is it's temporary. That means it starts with an end date. It does not have to be a specific end date, but as long as you start that, yeah, man, this has to end and it has to be handed over to operations somewhere, well, that's a start. That's called temporary. And it's always for some unique stuff. So let's talk about temporary. A temporary has a definite beginning. It must end. It's created for a very specific objective, and a team is specifically created for this particular project. And the moment the project is over, bye-bye, the team's gone away, right? And then we talk about unique. So what makes unique? Well, a project is always made for something unique. Now, unique does not mean that you're launching a rocket or you're building a building for the first time in your life. No, even if you do something similar with a different plan or in a different way, it's still unique, right? And or if you end up modifying something which is existing, like I have a house which has got 4 bedrooms. If I have to add 2 more bedrooms, well, that's a modification, and that modification would result into a project till it gets finished and handed over to my family, right? For living, and living in this house is operational. So that's unique, right? So get that true. And the third one is a project always has progressive elaboration. That means you will never know, no matter how well you plan, in the beginning of the project, you'll not know everything. You will come to know about some of the things as you get into the project. As you start conducting the project, you'll understand it better and better. And when do you understand it completely? You understand it when you hand over, right? So when does the project actually end? The real answer is when you hand it over. To whom? To operations. And therefore, whenever you get a piece of work or any scenarios you see in the exams, you ask yourself 3 questions. Are they talking about something temporary? Are they talking about something unique, which means creating something new, or doing the same thing in a different manner, or modifying something, right? That's the 3 questions. And that takes care of unique. And the third is progressive elaboration. Do we know everything in the front, or do we learn it over the life cycle of the project? If the answer to all the 3 questions is yes, only then it's a project. If the answer is no to any one of them, it is some form of operations. But one thing is sure, it's not a project. This is how you need to understand a very basic thing as what's a project and what's not. Now, why do you need to know the difference? Well, They don't ask you in exams that, you know what, is this a project or not? No, they don't do that, but they give you a scenario. And sometimes, many times, those scenarios are about operations, but people think, well, this is a PMP question, so why would they talk about operations? And they end up answering wrong questions or wrong answer. So in order to understand the scenario, you should be able to read the question and figure out whether they're talking about project or they're talking about operations. And well, these are three elements to be learned in this fashion, and you will never go wrong. All right, so that's one aspect, okay? And then you need to look at process groups like this. Now, there's a process group given in very differently in the PMBOK. That's fantastic. Actually, that's even more accurate, but this actually makes you understand things better. So these are the process groups, right? Initiation, planning, execution, monitoring and controlling, and closing. I just call it IPECC. Like, that's how I call it, IPECC. Initiation, planning, execution, monitoring, controlling, closing, right? I know it was really fast. That's how, you know, I kind of remembered it. It's very easy, right? What you need to know is, out of the 49 processes that are there in project management, what is the process distribution? This is really going to help you with a lot of examination questions, right? Just knowing this will actually help you a lot. So you need to know that initiation has 2 processes, planning has 24 processes, executing 10 processes, monitoring, controlling 12, and closing has just 1, right? So they total up to be 49 processes. But what you also should know, that process groups, when made like this, actually are also called project management lifecycle. Do not get confused between 2 things. One is called the project lifecycle, which is a different thing, right? And there is project management lifecycle. So whenever in the exams you see the word project management lifecycle, they're talking about what you are seeing right now on your slides, or whichever instrument that you're using, the screen in front of you. That, sir, is called process, or what I call project management lifecycle, which is nothing but process group. Also understand that sometimes in exams, they do ask you, what is PDCA? PDCA is plan, do, check, act, and PDCA is a cycle of continuous improvement. But then why are we talking about PDCA when we're talking about project management lifecycle and process groups? Well, because a very popular question in exams is, how is PDCA implemented in project management, or the cycle of continuous improvement implemented in project management? And your answer is through process groups, which is also known as project management lifecycle. That's the purpose of this particular slide. I hope you took the notes. All right. Now, there's a lot of confusion that I see about kickoff meeting. People write all kinds of stuff. Some people think that just initiating a project is kickoff. Some people think that when your project is finished, right, the customer says, okay, I accept the deliverables, that's a kickoff. Well, that's not, right? So let me tell you what's the relationship between a baseline and kickoff meeting, right? So first of all, baseline, which is made up of 3 elements, which is scope, time, and cost, right? Scope, time, cost, 3 things. Therefore, they have 3 elements, and therefore they have 3 processes which produce different versions of the baseline, different kinds of baselines, and they all merge together to create the project baseline. And that project baseline is called the final approved plan just before execution. Now, once you have that plan, and please remember the term, it says final approved plan just before execution, right? And that's when you conduct a kickoff meeting. So look at the line which is called baseline, which is at the end of planning, just before execution. So the moment you set your baseline, you actually kick off execution. So kicking off means kicking off execution. So now this is my plan, this is my baseline, this is what we've approved, and let's, you talk with your vendors, with your team, with all the people who are going to be involved in execution, including your QA, testing, every guys together, and you say, this is what is expected of you. This is the plan for the entire project. Let's kickstart. That's called kickoff meeting. So remember this diagram, remember this. And I always try to put a lot of pictures because it's easy for people to retain. And I can guarantee you, once you look at this diagram, you won't forget, right? You don't even have to take notes. That's why I have so much of faith in, making illustrations, because it's kind of easy to retain. right? So this is what kickoff meeting is, and it's very closely related to creation of the baseline. All right, coming to another point, which is PV, which is present value, NPV, net present value, and there's something known as IRR, which is internal rate of return. Yeah, well, let me tell you something. I have a financial background. One of the things that I used to do in my life was merchant banking, so I'm an expert on this. But you really don't need to be a financial whiz kid or something, because that's not what PMP is asking you for. They just want to know that if you have the values given to you by a CA or any financial guy in your company, you would know what it means. That's all. That's all they want to hear. There'll be no formula asked. You would not have to calculate PV, NPV, IRR, no matter who tells you. You'll never have to do that, right? But let me tell you what you do need to know. And that is, so what I've done is I've converted it into one of the simplest one of the simplest, how do I say, rules, right? And let me show you to you how those rules work. And you will never go wrong, no matter what. You will never, ever, ever, ever go wrong, right? So here's the rule number one. Rule number one, if in the question, all the projects are shown only using PV, right? They compare questions and they say, hey, which project is better? Which one should you invest in, right? So if the question shows up like this, right? Which project would you invest in? Project A, PV of $10,000, project B, PV of $30,000, project C, $32,000, and project D, $20,000. Which should you go for? And if you look at this rule, it's obvious. Voila, you got the answer. You go for C because all the questions are on PV. All the projects are on PV. Simply select the highest PV and you're done. All right, let's move to rule number two. Rule number two is, it's a combination of when in a question you get a situation, it's a combination of PV and NPV. Now, NPV is a very sophisticated calculation compared to PV because NPV also takes into account a lot of discount values and cash flow over a period of time. So you cannot even compare the outputs of NPV with PV. It's like apples and oranges. You can't even compare. But you'll simply go for NPV simply because you know more about the project. It's a more certifiable kind of a project. And therefore, the rule is very simple. If you get a question where you have a combination of PV and NPV, like right here, you have project A, NPV 1,000, project B, PV 30,000, project C, PV 1 million. I just wanted to go extreme here, right? So don't take it personally. And then project D, where NPV is 800. So you have got two NPVs and one PV. Which one would you go for? And if you follow this rule, well, you'll go for only NPV. But there are two, so you'll go for the higher of the two, and therefore, that's your answer. Very simple. Even if there was only one NPV here, you would select that. You'll just disregard all the other projects with PV. Yeah, it's as simple as that. That's rule number two. Guess what the rule number three is, right? I'm sorry, there's a misprint here. I just, again, kind of wrote it as rule number two, but this is three. Sorry for that. And if all projects in the questions are a combination of PV and NPV and IRR, then the same rule applies. Simply select the highest IRR, or even if there's only one IRR, select that. And I think the answer here is very apparent. There's only one here with IRR, and voila, that's the answer. All right. So I hope you remember these rules, right? If you want, I can quickly go through them again, right? All right, why not? So rule number one, if all projects in the questions are on PV, simply select the highest PV. All right. If all the questions in if all the projects in a question are a combination of NPV and PV, simply select the highest NPV, or even if it's a single one, select that. You'll never go wrong, trust me, right? And third, and I'm sorry for the misprint, if the project in the question, in the question, the projects are a combination of PV, NPV, and IRR, simply select the highest IRR, disregard everything else, and even if it's the only one which is available there, select that. Okay, perfect. All right, so there are more questions coming in, and as I said, I will actually take it all of that towards the end, but I will keep on sliding back and forth in the slides to make sure that you have the perspective. And then we have a warning note, right? It's very important what not to do. You should be aware of what not to do, because there are a lot of trick questions in the exams. Like, for example, if they give you a question that you got a very important call, an urgent call from your customer, and he's urging you to make certain changes without which he's going to face a lot of problems, and he convinced you and you think that a change is very important, but he says time is of essence and you need to get it done right now, and you go ahead and do it. So is that a good thing? Should you do it? Should you go for the option which says, well, the customer is important and it's important for him, it's important for the business, and you understand it, you should do it immediately? Well, that's wrong. You should never do it, right? So be careful. There'll be a lot of pressure points in the exams. You will get this feeling that I should do it, but you should not. So there are a lot of warnings that you should write on your own to figure out what not to do. One of them is, there is nothing known as a verbal change request. Every change request has to be documented either by the originator or by the project manager. Even if someone raises a verbal change request, it has to be documented in a change request, CR form, and duly signed and approved by the originator before you continue with your entire CR process. That means you get it approved or rejected. So you should also have notes about what not to do. Like, for example, another note which is not given here and you could remember is, no project charter is equal to no project. Yeah, serious. No project charter is equal to no project. What it means is that if any question tells you about, the sponsor is telling you, no, this is an important project, we need to get started, time is of essence, right? We will make the project charter later, but let's get started. So you will actually end up choosing the option which talks about pushing back to the sponsor, saying that we should not proceed without signing a project charter. So remember this rule, no project charter is equal to no project. These kind of rules or warnings are very important, right? Okay, let's continue. One of the very important things that you need to remember in exams is called CCB in ICC. It's visible here. Now, what the hell is a CCB? Some of you know it's called Change Control Board. Well, Change Control Board is that singular body, high-powered body that actually decides on all the change requests that happen in that particular project, right? And therefore, CCB has to be the expert judgment or the main decision-making body in the process called Perform Integrated Change Control, because that is the process, the only process out of 49 processes which actually handles change requests, right? 24 processes have change requests as an output, but this is the only process where change request is an input. And the main body is CCB, and therefore simple. Whenever you see any word like change request or anything about changes, you should immediately trigger CCB in ICC, and you will never go wrong. CCB in ICC, right? These are important tricks, how you should remember stuff, right? And therefore, you should know this is the only process, which is ICC, Integrated Change Control, where change request is an input. And CCB is in the ICC process, which actually decide whether they should approve it or reject it. If they approve it, it becomes an approved change request, which is an output, right? And if they disapprove it, it just gets added to the change log, and that's the end of it, right? That's how you need to remember. You cannot get yourself to remember each and every change, each and every input or each and every output. No, that's all you need to remember as far as ICC is concerned. That's it. That's all the ITOs you need to know, and that's it. You will never forget. That's how you should be actually talking about notes, right? Now, the authentic steps in change request. And I suggest you to take a screenshot of this. This is a really, really well-documented stuff that I took a lot of time going through a lot of examination questions to put it here. You can take a screenshot or whatever, how you want to do it. It's your call, right? Now, this actually is the entire flow diagram of the change request as per PMP exams, right? In the real world also, you're supposed to do something like this, but some companies take a shortcut, or some people have a more detailed approach depending on a government company or a IT company or something like that. Don't worry about that. But for exams, this is the entire process. Now, why is it so important? Okay, watch this question. Listen to this question. You're a project manager, a customer has just handed over a change request to you, and you actually sat with your team. And when I'm saying this question, please go through this entire flow and see where I leave off. And you've sat with your company and you've done an impact analysis on time, scope, as well as cost, and you looked at the technical aspect of it. And along with the change request form and along with your suggestions, you have handed over to the CCB to have a look, and for them to approve it or reject it, right? What should you do next? Now, remember, in the scenario question, where have I have left off and what's the next thing to do, right? So a lot of people have raised hands, but as I said, it's a webinar, so I'm going to kind of do it towards the end, right? And so over here, we talk about, we left it here, right? So the next thing for the CCB to do is to approve or reject. But if they say, in the scenario, they say, they have approved it, what should you do next? Then you say the PM adjusts the baseline. So you have to look at the question and see where they left off, and the next thing would be this. So this is exactly for that. Go ahead, take a screenshot of what you want to do with this, right? This is made extremely painstakingly, and that's the kind of notes you guys need to make, all right? All right, let's look at the flow of deliverables, right? There's deliverables, right? And let's look at the entire journey of deliverables across the life cycle of the project. So where is the deliverable actually born? Which is the process which gives birth to the deliverables, right? And that is direct and managed project work, which has an output called deliverables. These deliverables then become an input to a process called control quality, because control quality is called verification. Always remember, verification is done before validation, and therefore the control quality process will verify whether deliverables have quality standards or not. And if they find yes, then the output will become verified deliverables, which in turn will become an input to the process called validate scope, where the customer would validate, would inspect whether the deliverables meet the requirements or not. And if they find it does meet, well, the output is accepted deliverables. And see how easy it is for you to know the entire journey of deliverables. Now, how does this help? It helps like hell. It's amazing. You know what happens in the real world, in the PMP exams, what happens is they give you a situation about deliverables that the project team is working with checklists on deliverables and they're finding a lot of mistakes, right? What are they doing, right? And you say that, well, if they're finding mistakes, they're using checklists, then it means that they are not in validate scope. They are in, and neither are they creating the deliverables, but they're somewhere in between, which is like quality, something to do with quality. And they are verifying. And therefore, they're talking about verification. If they're talking about creation, they're talking about direct and managed project work. If they're talking about a customer or the customer's representative looking at the finished product for acceptance, then they're in validate scope. This is how you need to remember. Otherwise, people get thoroughly confused because deliverables sound exactly the same, right? But they have a huge difference in meaning, right? This is how you need to make the maps, right? Very simple. You will never forget. This is how the notes have to be made. All right. So, well, quite a few points. And this is the time for questions and answers. I know you have some people have already raised it, but I just want to let you know, guys, I hope you're using QA, my mistake. You're using QA sheets, right? So let me switch on the QA, and I don't have anything written in QA. So, all right, let me look at where the other people have. Where are you guys writing it? Is it in the chat? Okay. Okay, let me have a look at the chats, guys. So for that, I'll have to stop sharing for the moment and look at my chat. All right. So for some reason, chat's not visible when you are, all right. So let's see. Okay. So this is general salutations, stuff like that. I'm not too late. Joining from Delhi. Okay. All right. Let's say good evening. Is there any question? Okay. Can you brief why there is a connection to planning for monitoring and controlling? Of course, I'll do that. All right. So, so that's one question. That's a very good question. Questions related to controlling and supportive PMO. All right. I'll talk to you about that also. All right. So these are, but please, my suggestion is, could you please direct all your questions to Q&A, because that's something that gets popped up properly in a webinar, right? So some of you have raised hands, but I'm not too sure. If you could just write the question in the Q&A, that'll make a very big difference. So I've got a hands from Prudent Biosum. Okay. So Prudent, could you please write a question on the Q&A? That's really going to help because, for example, I have to answer Johnny, and when I have to have Ginny Johnny, I would have to go through the slides, and for which I need to get hosted, and chat doesn't work there, right? So I'll remember the 2 questions in the chat, but after that, I really can't, talk from chat. So let's talk about this. All right. So I'm going to rehost the slides. All right. So that we are in perspective, right, as we go along. All right. So sorry, there we go. And let's share. And there we are. All right. So let's have a question. The first question that somebody had was something to do with the line, which is the arrows, the significance of arrows. So, the person is basically talking about this arrow, which is going from monitoring and controlling. So let me tell you the significance of all the arrows, guys. This is a very nice diagram. So you should know the significance of all the arrows, and you should also know about this one. So let me switch on the pointer screen option of laser pointer and say, well, if you notice between initiation and planning, there's a singular arrow. That means unidirectional arrow. What it means is that initiation has to be finished before you start with planning. Same is the case with here. Planning needs to be over before, it has to be baseline kicked off before you go for execution. But the moment you start execution, you have to start monitoring and controlling. It's like a back and forth. Now, what is going from execution to monitoring and controlling are deliverables. So that's the direction here. And the documents to compare it with. But what's going back? The going back is the errors, the fixes that, they might have things done wrong. So here, the monitoring and controlling goes back to execution and says, guys, plan is fine. Plan is correct. You guys are wrong. Get it done. Fix it. Fix the problem. It's not passing the roster. People will not accept it. Just do it again. So that's what is known as the feedback. The fix it goes back. But what is it that goes from here to here? That, sir, is called change. A change is change to the baseline. A change is called a change because it alters the baseline. And a baseline would result into rebaselining. That means the errors or some new changes have come to an extent that now you have to change the plan, rebaseline, and re-execute as per the new plan. So I hope I've answered that question about the significance of the arrow. Now, somebody talked about PMO. Well, I'll take that up at the end because PMO was not really covered here. So I'm going to take up those questions first, which was covered here, but I will stick around, take care of PMO as well. All right. Which are the common IT tools to remember? Well, that's a very tough question, right? There are quite a few, actually, right? But here's what I'm going to tell you, Sheikh Shiraz, right? Sheikh Shiraz, let me tell you something very interesting. You probably would not even have to remember input tools and techniques and outputs if you just remembered for each of the 49 processes, what is it that they are meant for? For example, if I pick up a process like, just pick up anything like, plan procurements. Let's just talk about plan procurements. Like, what is the purpose of that process? The main purpose of that process is that, hey, are we going to make it ourselves or are we going to, outsource something? So that's called make or buy decision, right? So obviously that's got to be one of the tools, right? And techniques, right? That's it. That's how you need to remember. So, all right. So if we decide to make it, then if we decide to make it, then what's the part of the planning? Well, if you decide to make it, then you have to make an RFP, you have to make the SOW, you have to make the entire documentation that you can give to all the vendors the bidders who can then understand and give you a proposal, and then you can select. So all your one of the major outputs of plan procurements is, of course, make or buy decision, which I've already talked about, and the list of all the procurement documents. That's it. That's your output. You don't have to remember anything, right? That's it. That's how you need to kind of remember. What is the main purpose of validate scope? Well, validate scope is to approve it. Approve against what? Against requirement. So requirement has to be an input. All right. So what is it that we are inspecting? So it's inspection. It's post facto. That means it's a physical inspection. So that's one of the important tools and techniques. And it's going to inspect deliverables. So deliverable has to be an output. It should be an input. So requirements and deliverables are an input. Inspection is the main tool and technique, and the output is accepted or rejected deliverables class, and you're done, right? That's how you need to know. There is nothing about ETOs, guys. People have just blown it out of proportion. Don't let it get to your head. People are making massive mistakes about ETOs. That's not how you do it. All you need to do is understand. If you mug up, this is not school, right? This is professional certification. If you understand, no matter how difficult questions are, it'll be a cakewalk for you. But what people are doing is they're trying to mug up. They're going to these cheap, I'm sorry, I'm going to be very blunt. People are going to these cheap institutes. They're going for, $10, $10 worth of Udemy courses. Like, that's the kind of courses people are doing right now. Do you really think that, if they had value, they'll be doing it for $10? Think about it, right? So people are collecting information from there, and then it's crazy. It's really crazy out there. People are just bombarding with, you need to learn this, you need to learn that. Don't do that, right? Don't get into that, right? It seems that some people are still raising hands. I think it's Glenn. I don't know if I remember got the name right. Please, you would not be able to speak in this one because this is a webinar. I sincerely request you to just use the question and answer Q&A, a feature that you have, to just enter the questions and I'm going to answer. I'll be here as long as you have questions, right? So that's what I do, right? So how to sequence 200 questions in attempting. All right, well, as I said, in the scope, Mr. Shikhar Verma, I'll not be actually talking much about questions because that was out of the scope, how to get the exams. But since you've asked, that's a very big issue. I will answer that along with the PMO questions at the end, because I have to first answer all the questions which are connected to the scope of the work today, all right? So somebody is talking about Kotishwaran is talking about which book has more pictorial representations to understand the PMBOK book concepts easily. If so, please recommend. Yes, Mr. Kotishwaran, I am going to recommend a book, but that's your choice, how you like it or not, but I will recommend. Mr. Krishna, can you please explain about opportunity cost, sir? Many people got, yeah, all right. Okay, yeah, it's a huge issue. People have all kinds of, the more books you read, the more. First of all, guys, let me be very honest about opportunity cost. Opportunity cost hardly shows up in the exams anymore. It's very rare for opportunity cost to show up in the exams, right? It's a very prehistoric kind of a stuff, right? So it's very rare, right? Now, if at all you see a question there, so guys, please remember this, write it down if you have to. Opportunity cost in Adam Smith's book has a different, Adam Smith was a famous economist who actually gave birth to the concept of opportunity cost. So it's completely different there. Philip Kotler actually, makes a completely different assumption about it. But when it comes to PMP exam, what I'm going to tell you is exactly what you need to remember. It will not be anything different. For example, if they give you a certain amount of questions, projects, they say, okay, project A has an investment of so many million, project B has an investment of so many 100,000 or whatever it is. So they have 3 or 4 projects and they say this is the investment. And then the question would be that you selected or your company selected project B, which has so-and-so investment, right? Then what is the opportunity cost of B, right? What is the opportunity cost? So the purest definition of opportunity cost is, it is the sum total of all the costs that you did not invest in. Get it right. It is the sum total of all the investments that you did not invest in. That means if you selected one project and there were 3 other projects, you add the investment of all the other 3 which you did not select, and that's the right answer. In several books, some of the very well-known books like that famous lady, they've written horrible stuff, right? They've even talked about the next highest or something like that. It's all, I'm sorry to use the word, but it's all BS. Opportunity cost has different meaning in different context, but as far as PMP concerned, this is what it is, right? So Krishna and others, I hope that I've been able to solve. Any pointers, tips for taking online exam? Yeah, well, that's going to be my my 5th webinar, Nipun Lakotia. There'll be a complete webinar only about how to take the exam, whether online or whether at the center. It'll be covered in absolute detail, what to watch out for. And that's the topic of our next webinar. I'm sorry, Nipun. but this one is only dedicated for certain notes and how to write notes, right? And stuff like that. And somebody says, what is the fees? And I have no clue what it means. Are you talking about the PMP exams? Well, that's $555, but some of those fees is changing now when they do it in online. So I have no clue. I'm just assuming that's the kind of fees that you're asking for. Otherwise, I have no clue. Anyway, so now we have Prudent, and we have, please, sir, can you once again come back to the change process and baseline? Sure, I'll do that. So Prudent, just hang in there and let me get to the change. Now, I'm just assuming that the change process that you wanted was this. All right, so this is the kickoff meeting, the baseline. So you can, I'm just going to spend a few seconds here so that you can take a quick screenshot, something like that. Yeah, good, right? So I'm just assuming that you probably have already done it, right? And I move to the next one. And I probably think that you were talking about probably this. All right, so go ahead and take a screenshot of this if you have to. I'm just kind of conjecturing here because I thought you said something of this. And I think there's one more. So just hold on, guys, and I will go there. And probably this is what also something that you're looking at. In fact, you should just go ahead and take a screenshot of this. This is kind of cool, right? Go ahead and do that, right? It's very important for exams. Change requests are a popular subject in exams anyhow. So just go ahead and take a shot at this. All right, so let me look at the Q&A again, and let's see where we are at. So Prudent, just let me know if you have been able to, take care of this, right? So, all right, cool. So can you elaborate a little about earned value analysis? Yes, actually, Rubal, Kalita, somewhere down the line, I'm actually going to have a webinar only dedicated to earned value. Like I like doing a lot of free stuff, right? I just do that, not for anything. I just like to help people. People have worked with me, people who know me, they know I just do that. So yes, earned value analysis is definitely on the line somewhere, and I will do it, but I can't tell you exactly when, because right now I'm concentrating on few important changes in PMP exams and few important things, and then I'll come to earned value analysis, among other things, right? There'll be quite a few things, because every Wednesday we're going to have this, right? So something or the other will always be there, right? So it's called Webinar Wednesday. So Rubel, it's not going to be but somewhere in May, I will make sure it's going to be there, right? So I missed your earlier webinars. Are those recorded? Yes, you just write Webinar Wednesday or Manish Vijay or something on YouTube. Probably you'll get one of those recorded ones which are kept there. There's a separate channel only for this, right? So if you write Webinar Wednesday with my name, which is Manish Vijay, my name the spelling is very different. It's MANEESH. So if you write MANISH, apparently it's a very popular name. So you get a lot of Manish from all over across India. Some of them are actors, right? So yeah, just write MANEESH and you'll probably start getting some of my videos, right? So, but they are there. So don't worry about it. Any suggestions on quality PMP simulation exams for practice purposes? Yes, I'll actually explain that to you and introduce that to you as well. How performance guarantee periods work? Any plan in PMBOK 6th edition? Wait a second, I'm not too sure about the question. How performance guarantee period works? Any plan in PMBOK 6th edition? Hey, Joshua, Mr. Raju, if you can actually take some more time to write the question a little more properly, I would be able to get it. Meanwhile, let me get into the chat. Right, so again, for the chat, I have to kind of, wait a second, guys. I will have to kind of stop sharing and then go to chat. That's a very funny thing that happens. Okay, somebody raised hands a couple of times. Okay, so I think Prudent has already been able to take care of that. So fine, good. All right, so any other questions? Let me share the screen once more and let's continue. And I'm just going to make sure that all your questions are answered. Let me get back to some of the questions which I had parked. About it. Can you please prepare a webinar on schedule control? Yeah, sure, why not? Yep, every Wednesday, I have to have a lot of topics, right? So every webinar Wednesday is only on PMP. Every single Wednesday webinar will be on PMP. and you will get a lot of values, right? So that's the kind of webinars I like to do, right? I want to have a lot of value in them. Right, now let's talk about PMO, and where a second pointers for taking online exam, which I said is part of something else, but there was a question that I paused. Let me get back. Opportunity cost, I've explained how to sequence. Okay. All right, so there was something about how to sequence 200 questions in an attempting. All right, so here's what I'm gonna do. Let me finish the webinar and then I will answer these questions. And let me also see, all right, is fixed price incentive fee problem so important in procurement care? All right, well, actually, that's a good thing. Vishwa Anand, thank you very much for asking this question. Well, you know, the questions in exams on the fixed price incentives do not exist, right? They do not exist in the real exam, all right? They just ask you, what are the different varieties of a fixed price contracted? So you have a firm fixed price, you have a fixed price with incentive, and you have a fixed price with economic adjustment, right? So they just talk about different things, different varieties of it. They don't ask you to calculate anything to do with any incentive. So please don't fall for that trap. I have no clue why certain books talk about it. It doesn't show up, right? Because PMI knows, right? You got to understand. PMP is not going to ask you things which is supposed to be done by your supply, supply chain team, or your procurement team, or your accountant, right, or your cost management. They only ask you detailed questions to calculate things which has something to do with project management. That is why you have to calculate a float. Yeah, because that is something that you have to do, right? So the thing that I just told you, you can actually look at different people's notes and figure out, well, if it is to be done by a chartered accountant or is to be done a financial analyst, well, that's not going to be asked of you, right? So this is not asked, but they do ask you about something very interesting, and that is the point of total assumption, right? Now, hardly any book actually writes about the point of total assumption. What it actually means is that in fixed price contract, after a period of time, if the vendor has not been careful and they have completely utilized the fees, the price which the client is paying, they still have to finish the work, and the point from which they have exhausted all their price, the money that they're receiving from the customer, and from that point onwards, whatever they invest to finish the project is the money that they have to pay from their own pocket, and that point is called the point of total assumption. Now that is something you need to remember, but forget about any calculations or contract calculations in exam, Vishwanand. Trust me, it doesn't show up there. It's as simple as that, all right? So guys, I'm just assuming that's probably more or less the questions that I have so far. So let me continue, right? And I will pick up the two questions that I left out at the very end, because I just want to make sure for the people who are present here that I take care of the entire webinar that we are here for. So one very quick poll. I just need your help, guys. Which day of the week, kind of works for you better? So I am actually going to a different poll, and I'm going to say polling 2, and I'm going to relaunch it. Please answer it as soon as you can and as brutally honest as you can. So guys, please go ahead. I've just launched another this thing for you. If you can kind of answer it as soon as you can, it's going to help me a lot. All right, cool. Very nice. Fantastic. All right, pretty good, pretty good, pretty good. So we have, all right, so, all right, guys, just a couple of guys missing. All right, all you have to do is answer this, and okay, not bad, not bad. Okay, time for us to end the polling. Thank you, guys, thank you so much. So great, so I have these, thanks for sharing this information, means a lot to me. And now our contribution towards better PMP preparation, and that will also take care of some of the questions that you had about the kind of book. So for example, one of the things that we do is we have something known as a live wire training that we conduct over the internet because of course the situation is such. And it's, in fact, one of the most interactive trainings you can come across. It's not one of those one-sided that person is talking about. And, whether everybody participates and we make people understand. So it's focusing on understanding. And that's probably the reason why we have near 100% passing rate. And people who have studied from us usually don't feel any kind of stress when they're preparing for the exams, right? Unless they start talking to somebody else. That's when they start getting stressed. Every material that you need is from us. We provide everything. We don't ask you to buy anything. We request you, because we take full accountability of every material, right down to PMP Simulator, which is probably the best in the industry. People have come to me and said they want to use a simulator because they heard from somebody else. So we have everything, and we work very, very, very hard for that. Anyway, so we have two options coming up in May 2020. So we have methodology would be online. Of course, you can join it from anywhere as long as the time suits you. But the times would be kind of different. So the first option is that we'll be working on Fridays from 4 p.m. to 8 p.m. This is, of course, India time, which is where I am from. And Saturdays and Sundays would be on from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. So it's more like a more compressed and a very intensive course. And the dates for that are May 8th, 9th, and 10th. And then there would be a gap, and then 15th, 16th, and 17th. So basically, needless to say, they are Friday, Saturday, Sunday, then again Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And Fridays are like, 4 p.m. to 8 p.m. And then the Saturdays and Sundays are from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m., right? So it's more intensive, right? It's a go-getter kind of a thing. Right? But then we have another option, which is kind of more laid back, because some people are working very hard and they have a lot of meetings going on. For them, we have a very different kind of a methodology, a different set of time. And that is that it goes on for every day from 4 p.m. to 8 p.m. And those dates are very simple, from May 11 to 14. And then there's a gap of 4 days. And then from May 18 to May 22, right? So that's what it is. And those from 11th to 14th and 18th to 22, every single day from 4 p.m. to 8 p.m., 4 p.m. to 8 p.m. So it's like towards the later half of the day when things kind of get cooled down, and you can invest that time, right? So that's some of the contribution that we make for PMP preparations. If you're interested, you know where to contact me, right? Go ahead and let me know. All right. So our contribution doesn't end there. Somebody was asking about one of the most illustrative books. Well, this is the one that I wrote with my own hands. It's got literally more than 900 illustrations, right? And it actually became a bestseller at Amazon. It's really respected book, and it's made in a very different style. What I've done in this book is I've tried to make it as interesting. So basically, every concept that we talk about in the book is in PMB, okay, is explained with a real world example. Everything has been explained with real world example. It's got a lot of, it's available on every side of this thing. You can just go to Amazon.com or .in or any of the other sites, depending on which part of the world you are in, and just write read and pass notes, or just write Manish Vijay. That's my name. It's very typical, MANEESHNVIJAYA, Manish Vijay, and you'll find this book. In fact, there are two other books also, but this is the complete book, and the other books are different versions of the same book. And it has more than 900 illustrations, has got so many examples. After the end of each of the topic, there are drills, right? So the most important concepts or the most important ethos are covered after that particular chapter. And it has access to PMP exam simulator. So once you buy this book, what happens is at the end of it, there's a code. You use that code and you get access to one of the best simulators with more than 1,200 questions in examination sets of 4 hours each, right? They're really, and they look exactly like the real exam. So this is what it is. So this is one of the contributions that we've made. And as I said, that I also created the very first audio platform on the planet dedicated only to project management, and that is dhwani.pmpulse.com. And it's crystal clear audios, just the right sizes, right? It has got some packages, right? It has massive coverage. It's very, very comprehensive, right? Nothing is left out. And the best thing about audio is you can listen to them anytime. And this audios is not like somebody's reading out to you, right? It's not being read out from a book, because see, people lose the perspective. So the audios have been reworded and respoken in such a manner to understand that the person who'll be listening to it would not be reading any book or would not be looking at a video. So everything has to be understood from the audio. So it's an audio. It's not like just somebody just recorded something reading from a book. No, that's horrible. So, and it's human voice. It's very clear, and you can listen anywhere. And it'll look the best utilization of your time. It's got 3 packages, but don't take my words for it. There is a section here which is called free audios, right? There's a lot of free stuff. We put in a lot of free stuff, a lot of important stuff. You can just go through the free audios. There are some taster audios. Just check it out, right? See it for yourself if you like it or not. If you like it, voila, you can go ahead and subscribe. If you don't like it, well, you can still keep coming back here. You can at least use the free audios because I put a lot of stuff there. So it's all up to you. So you have 3 options for the kind of person you are. If you want to go ahead with the training, you want to go ahead with a book, you want to go ahead with the audios, right? Go ahead. Like these are the contributions that we've done. All right. So guys, I really hope to see you again soon. And it was nice talking to you, all of you, right? So let's just try to go towards the end of this entire session. And if there are no other questions, then let me thank you for your presence. Thank you so much, guys. Thank you very, very, very much, right? Take care. Have a nice evening or rest of the weekend. And I think I just got another chat message which says thank you. Same to you. All right. Thank you, guys. See you guys.